Now, it does sometimes feel like every day there's a new story about Stonehenge, but today we really do have some fascinating insights into the stones and what the people there were like at the time that the henge was built. And it all comes from this massive tome that I've got here. As I said to Sue earlier, I could either knock somebody over the head and steal their money or build my house with it. It's a massive book featuring lots of Wiltshire history, all written by historian Dominic Selwood from Salisbury. It's called Anatomy of a Nation, a history of British identity in 50 documents. And inside it, lots of information about British history and what these documents tell us about our past. And Wiltshire features a lot.
The book on one level it's a history of Britain from when humans first walk onto the British Peninsula in 950,000 BC all the way up to now. I wanted to really explore within that the idea of identity and what it means to be British. And I guess more importantly, what different things it has meant to be British over the centuries. And at the same time, one of my dearest loves is documents, because I think unlike other objects from archaeology or buildings or whatever, in documents you get the personal words of people, and that just parachutes you directly into their room while they're writing it, whatever that period is, and you get a very personal view because they're using their own words.
Is this the history of admin? I don't
Well, actually, lots of history books aren't they? Because they're all sort of royal charters and Magna Carta, and but this really isn't. I've made a really conscious effort to go out and find documents from ordinary people.
Now, your first chapter is about Stonehenge. What were you looking at there?
Right, so Stonehenge is the document that opens the book. I've used a broad definition of document, which is fine. The Oxford English Dictionary says it can include things that are carved, written, painted, depicted. It doesn't just have to be handwriting and letters. So on Stonehenge, it was discovered not that long ago that there are carvings. And I'm not talking about all the signatures that people have graffitied on over the years, like Christopher Wren, who sort of graffitied his name onto it because he lived not far off. But actually, old Bronze Age carvings. And so there are carvings of about 115 axe heads and 3 daggers on the stones, which, I grew up in Salisbury. I used to visit Stonehenge regularly whenever visitors sort of came to us with golf and, whiz them around it. I had no clue it had carvings on it. So they are my first document, pictures and discussions of, well, why does Stonehenge have axe heads and daggers on it?
What were the most intriguing things that you think you spotted about Stonehenge that maybe you didn't know before?
Stonehenge is amazing because the people's understanding of it really evolves and says a lot about the time when people are investigating it. So, when the sort of the antiquaries first started getting into it, a couple of centuries ago, they were all excited by druids and Wicker men and ceremonies, and that turns out to have been completely wrong because, Stonehenge is far older than the period when there were Celts and druids. I never knew that it was a funerary site. I always thought that it had this astrological and religious and cultic significance, but I didn't know it was a burial site. It was used as a place of mass burial, and a huge number of bones have been found from there. And even the bones on Salisbury Plain are fascinating because they're not just local Wiltshire people. The Boscombe Bowmen come either from Wales or from Brittany. The Amesbury archer is extraordinary because he was a high-status person. He's got the oldest gold ever found in Britain buried with him. And yet, when they started examining his teeth, the oxygen isotopes in his tooth enamel show that he was born in Central Europe. And so, then we start thinking about, well, God, people moved around a lot more. I always grew up thinking that, that old thing that nobody ever moved more than 3 miles from their village. Totally wrong. And so at Stonehenge, they found lots of pits of animal bones, and many of them show that the animals were brought and raised up in Scotland, for example. So we know that people travelled from as far afield as Scotland to come down to the celebrations at Stonehenge. But one of the biggest things for me, actually, which I think is really exciting, is that not only from looking at these animal bones and working out what time of year they were slaughtered, but also from looking at the carvings on Stonehenge and the way they're dressed, it's quite clear it was not a summer festival. It was a winter festival. It was about the winter sun because these animals were slaughtered in winter. And actually, if you looking one way, yes, you get the summer solstice, but looking the other way, you get the winter solstice. The stones are dressed and decorated and set up in a way that it was clear that the winter one was the main one. So it's wonderful. People still go and celebrate at Stonehenge, but it'd be great to see a few more winter celebrations because that's probably what it was really all about.
That's Salisbury-born author Dominic Selwood there about his new book, Anatomy of a Nation, a history of British identity in 50 documents. Really fascinating, actually, just to find out what we can learn about all this just from reading bits and pieces that are lying around, basically, from what he's saying there. Really interesting, and Dominic Selwood with me talking about it on the programme.